everyone. Welcome back to St. Louis Teens. Today we have Igor Konfisakhar, who holds a master's degree in mathematics from Washington University. He's also an accomplished math coach, teacher, and researcher, and is dedicated to fixing America's broken math education system one student at a time. Hello, Igor. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. Just enjoying being at home. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We are at home today because of the coronavirus and, because of this sort of unprecedented pandemic. How has life changed for you?
Actually, almost not at all. I'm. It worked out. I think I'm the exception, but
Really?
I had just been. I have a math tutoring business. I had just been living internationally for like 5 out of 8 months, as you know.
Yeah.
And then I got back home on January 31st with the intent to basically self-isolate for several months to get all of my ducks in a row.
Okay.
And what do you know? Corona helped me become more disciplined in my self-isolation. And in terms of the tutoring business, it's probably better than it was. So almost no difference for me.
So have you seen any other changes in your business, maybe in terms of the number of customers who are coming or sales or questions that, clients are asking?
Well, I've lost a couple customers due to economic worries about losing jobs and stuff, so that's
Right.
serious. I've gained a couple customers due to them worried about losing their education. So in the end, I'm kind of breaking even, but I think that really there's probably a lot more demand for online tutoring right now. So for me, this is an opportunity to expand my business to nationwide group online math classes. I think a lot of people in the world are going to be warming up to learning online and learning math online as a result of this crisis. So I think that's one of the good effects of it.
And sort of continuing on the topic of math, as an expert in math, what is your opinion on the numbers and the graphs, specifically about the flattening the curve graph that we, see daily about COVID-19?
Um, I think flattening the curve is a stupid idea, and I've always thought it was a stupid idea.
Okay.
And I don't think that that's actually what we're trying to do. I think originally that was likely the plan, or maybe that was what they told us was the plan, just so that we felt like there was a plan. But I'm pretty confident that's not the plan anymore. Um, so there's, I can give you my kind of bullet point list of what's wrong with flattening the curve. Also,
Okay.
some of the things that are wrong with it have come out over time.
Right, right.
But the first and foremost, what's wrong is that it looks like the numbers of people that would be hospitalized and need all this medical treatment would just be so tremendously greater than our medical system's capacity that there would be no reasonable amount of flattening that we could do to keep it under capacity, unless we dramatically increased our capacity, which could be possible, but it would be very expensive.
Right.
So it was kind of unrealistically optimistic that we could have 180 million people in the country catch corona without overwhelming the medical system by spreading it out. The second problem with flattening the curve is that to flatten the curve, we have to significantly decrease R. That's
Right.
R, the number of people that catch the disease on average per person that has the disease. We'd have to decrease it a lot. And for that, we would have to use, some fairly strict measures. At least the way that we're doing it, we'd have to use strict measures. There's actually ways to do it with less strict measures. And so, basically they said, stay in your house, flatten the curve. How long are we going to stay in our houses for? The moment we come out of our houses, we're going back to exponential growth, just like if we had done nothing to begin with. 3, what we were doing is not flattening the curve. When we socially distance and self-quarantine and people don't go into work and you cancel schools, that's not flattening the curve. That's destroying the curve altogether.
Okay.
And you can see it happening in a number of countries where the curve isn't being flattened by doing these sorts of measures. It's just it maxed out. It's going back down. New cases are decreasing. In fact, I believe the new cases have just started decreasing in the United States. We'll see very soon if that's true. But flattening the curve is I lost my train of thought for a second there. What we're doing, our current measures are not consistent, and our measures from the beginning were not consistent with what we were saying.
Right.
We were destroying the curve, and if you destroy the curve, okay, you cancel everything for a while, the number of cases goes down to almost nothing. Then at some point you come out of your houses, and then you have exactly the same scenario that you would have originally had, except you've wasted a whole bunch of resources and caused everyone to suffer for many months before having that scenario. And also, I think this is the last big issue with flattening the curve, and this one has become more clear after they came up with the approach. However, it should have been fairly clear to begin with based on just the type of the class of virus that COVID-19 is based on its class of virus, it was reasonable to expect it to mutate.
Right.
And the more people that have it, the more it mutates. Yeah. Even with the number of people that have had it worldwide, there's probably at least 10 strains of it now. There's a number of strains of it now. If we let it, quote unquote, actually there's two more issues with it, so I'll say this issue and the next issue. If we let it, quote unquote, run its course, then you can expect the number of strains. If let's say that 10 million people worldwide have had it now.
Yeah.
Just a ballpark figure.
Right.
If 10 million people creates 10 strains, then it's like one strain per million people. And imagine if we let it run its course and 5 billion people had it.
Yeah.
How many strains would we have then?
Right.
What do you think is the probability that it would have mutated enough that someone who had one strain would be immune to every single other strain? I guess from 10 million to 5 billion, that's times 500.
Yeah.
So, even now, it's not clear whether a person who has had one strain is immune to the other strains that exist. I think it'll be clear pretty soon. But I'm guessing if it has 500 times as many opportunities to mutate, my money's on that you won't be immune to all the different strains.
Yeah.
And lastly, with the common cold, supposedly immunity lasts for just several months.
Yeah.
You can get the cold again after a few months.
Right.
So even if we were lucky and we could not, even if we were lucky and immunity against one strain made us immune against the other strains that we currently have, or we were incredibly lucky and immunity against one strain made us immune against all the gazillion strains that we'd have if 5 billion people in the world got it.
Right.
We might easily still be unlucky, and we might be able to catch the virus again simply because our immunity wears out after a certain period of time. And if we flatten the curve, which takes many months, or years, takes a long time.
Yeah.
If we took all that time to flatten the curve, there's not a guarantee that the original people that had, that got an immunity are no longer immune.
Right.
So the whole herd immunity thing is severely problematic, just based on whether it would even work.
And I kind of wanted to continue on that. You talked a little bit about the timeline of, if we flatten the curve, by the time we get to the end of the curve, people who might have had already got the virus at the beginning of the curve may not be immune at the end. So, per some mathematical predictions, how long do you think it would take to start seeing our current curve coming down or change concavity? And then what do you sort of foresee after that?
Okay. Well, first I want to mention one little thing I forgot to mention.
Okay.
And that's that, I guess kind of obviously the goal was to have quote unquote herd immunity, although it's kind of independent from us finding a vaccine. If we have herd immunity, it doesn't really matter if we find a vaccine.
Right.
But whatever the scenario was, the hope would be that we'd have a vaccine, and then that vaccine would treat a single vaccine would treat every form of corona, and then we'd be okay.
Yeah.
Then the world would be okay. However, if we did the other issue, which I think I alluded to already, if we did the flattening the curve approach and 5 billion people got it and we had a zillion strains, the more strains there are, the lower the likelihood that we can get a single vaccine that treats all of them.
Right.
The higher the likelihood that this is going to become like the flu, and it actually kind of mutates similarly to the flu, although less. So if we tried to flatten the curve, there's a high probability that we'd have so many different strains that we could not find a catch-all vaccine, and then this would become a yearly occurrence like the flu. So that sounds fun?
That does not sound fun.
But to answer your question, it's another issue with flattening the curve. So it had a slew of issues from beginning. I was very suspicious, and our actions did not match our words. And it also makes me concerned about kind of our government when they would propose a strategy that's so not good, and whether they were actually even following that strategy and why the actions don't match the words. And I wonder about that. But in terms of turning the curve around, I think it's already turned. I think we've already hit or are about to hit the maximum number of new daily cases. I think we've clearly gotten to the point where the concavity has changed, so where it's no longer exponential growth.
Okay.
If you look at, I could screen share if you wanted, but there's a graph I'm looking at which has the daily number of new cases in the United States, and it appears that it has just started to decrease, and that's based on our measures. That's exactly what I would have expected. I actually would have expected that it started to decrease a little bit earlier, and I think it actually did. I think it looks like it started to decrease later than it actually started to decrease because our testing took a while to catch up with our actual cases, and is still catching up. But yeah, we've already turned it. The question is, what are we going to do from here?
Right. And continuing on that, what other numerical estimates can we make in terms of COVID-19 ranging from the number of asymptomatic carriers to the real fatality rate? Because there are still, a lot of unknowns simply because we haven't tested everyone. So we can't say for certain what these numbers are, but what kind of estimates can we make?
I think that if you're good at math, there's a lot fewer unknowns than the official number of unknowns. And I think very soon those unknowns will become pretty well known, as there's lots of people researching this and doing studies.
Yeah.
Also, it's very easy to test. Like, you want to know the number of asymptomatic carriers, you can make a statistical study where you test a random sample of people, and you see, and I believe we now have ways to test if someone's already had it and has antibodies. So we could test a random sample of people, see how many of them have it, see how many of them have antibodies, and see how many had symptoms versus didn't have symptoms. Voila, you know the number of asymptomatic carriers.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to do that, and it makes me lose faith in humanity that we didn't do it much earlier, because it's, any government that was organized that had a decent number of tests, doesn't take a lot of tests, could have tested a random sample like this and had a real accurate estimate of the number of asymptomatic carriers, and they could have gotten a lot of other useful numbers from this. But there have been some studies to this effect, and I'm sure they'll do a proper study very soon if they haven't already. That all of that said, as a mathematician, I've been able to look